Hi everyone, John here, and fantastic day today. Gemini Dream.
It was the morning of October 10th, 2025, when the world of rock music stopped in disbelief. The headlines came pouring in from London. John Lodge, the longtime bassist and vocalist of the Moody Blues, had passed away at the age of 82. For more than 6 decades, his name had been synonymous with elegance, melody, and a timeless spirit that defined an era. But on that quiet autumn day, one of the last true gentlemen of classic rock slipped away surrounded by his loved ones, with the gentle harmonies of the Everly Brothers and Buddy Holly playing softly in the room. His family statement, posted on his official page, read, "It is with the deepest sadness that we announce that John Lodge, our darling husband, father, grandfather, and brother, has been suddenly and unexpectedly taken from us. He passed peacefully, surrounded by his family and the music he loved. It was short, tender, and devastating. There had been no warning, no prolonged illness, no farewell tour cut short. Just a sudden silence, the kind that follows the end of a beautiful song. Fans around the world flooded social media with tributes, sharing memories of the man whose bass lines had carried them through youth and heartbreak alike. From Birmingham to Boston, from Tokyo to Toronto, people played Nights in White Satin and wept. The Moody Blues were more than just a band. They were a bridge between the orchestral and the spiritual, between rock and philosophy. And John Lodge was the quiet architect behind that bridge, the heartbeat, the anchor, and the voice that made the impossible sound eternal. John Charles Lodge was born on July 20th, 1943, in Erdington, a working-class district of Birmingham, England. Like many children growing up in post-war Britain, he found solace in radio in the soulful harmonies of the Everly Brothers, the rhythm of Chuck Berry, and the hopeful sound of a new era. He was a bright student, more interested in music and mechanics than anything else. His parents, modest and supportive, encouraged him to follow his passions. In school, he met Ray Thomas, who would later become his bandmate. They bonded over guitars, amplifiers, and dreams too big for their small city. John attended Birmingham College of Advanced Technology, studying engineering, a discipline that would later shape his meticulous approach to sound. But music kept calling. He played in local bands, experimenting with blues, rock, and skiffle. His calm presence and melodic bass playing quickly set him apart. When the Moody Blues first formed in the early 60s, John was not part of the original lineup. The band's early sound was rooted in rhythm and blues, fronted by Denny Lane. But when the group evolved, seeking something deeper, more orchestral, John was invited to join in 1966 alongside Justin Hayward. That decision changed everything. Together, Lodge and Hayward would craft one of the most sophisticated and emotional catalogs in rock history. Their chemistry was natural, almost brotherly. Lodge once said, "Justin and I never really had to talk about music. We just knew what the other was thinking." In an era defined by the Beatles, Pink Floyd, and The Who, the Moody Blues dared to be different. They added symphonic strings, introspective lyrics, and philosophical narration, creating what critics would later call progressive rock. John's first major contribution came with the album Days of Future Past, 1967, which blended rock with a full orchestra. The song Nights in White Satin became immortal, but behind it all was John's steady, grounding bass, precise, emotional, and spiritual. Over the next decade, the Moody Blues released a string of acclaimed albums. In Search of the Lost Chord, To Our Children's Children's Children, A Question of Balance, and Every Good Boy Deserves Favor. Lodge's songwriting stood out both musically and lyrically. He wrote Ride My Seesaw, Isn't Life Strange, and I'm Just a Singer in a Rock and Roll Band. Songs that questioned fame, faith, and the fragility of human existence. Through his words, he was not chasing glory. He was searching for meaning. His melodic sensibility turned complex ideas into singable anthems. Unlike many bassists who stayed in the shadows, John was both the foundation and the voice, commanding without dominating. By the early 70s, the Moody Blues had become one of the most beloved and influential bands in the world. They filled stadiums, topped charts, and redefined what a rock concert could be. But fame never changed John Lodge. He remained the same, humble, soft-spoken man from Birmingham, always dressed impeccably, always polite, always professional. Colleagues described him as a man of integrity, decency, and melody. While others partied through the nights, John often returned to his hotel room with a Bible or a notebook of lyrics. Faith, family, and music, that was all he needed. In 1977, during a brief break from the Moody Blues, John released his first solo album, Natural Avenue. It was introspective, romantic, and deeply human. Critics praised its lush production and poetic lyricism. But John never sought solo fame. He often said, "I make music because I love it, not because I need to be seen." As the years went on, the Moody Blues adapted to changing times. The 80s brought synthesizers and polished pop, but their essence remained intact. John co-wrote Gemini Dream and The Voice, both hits from the platinum album Long Distance Voyager in 1981. Even in an MTV-dominated world, the band's sound stayed timeless. In 2018, the Moody Blues were finally inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, an honor many fans felt was long overdue. John, ever gracious, used his acceptance speech to thank not only his bandmates, but also the fans who never stopped believing. His humility shone brighter than any spotlight. In later years, he continued to tour under the banner John Lodge of the Moody Blues, performing both classic hits and newer material from his second solo album, 10,000 Light Years Ago, 2015. He loved being on stage, not for applause, but for connection. Off stage, he was a family man. Married to Kirsten Lodge since 1968, he often described her as my anchor. They had 2 children, Christian and Emily. Emily would later join him on stage, adding backing vocals, a moment he called the greatest gift of all. John was also open about his faith. He credited it for keeping him grounded through the chaos of the rock world. While many peers succumbed to addiction or ego, he stayed clear. His compass was moral, his demeanor calm. He once said, "Faith gives me balance. Music gives me purpose. Family gives me everything else." Even in his 80s, he remained active. In 2024, he continued touring, performing the Royal Affair and After set with members of Yes and Asia. Friends noted that he was as sharp and gentle as ever, always smiling, always grateful. That's what made his passing on October 10th so shocking. No illness had been reported, no sign of weakness, just a sudden, heartbreaking silence. Within hours, tributes poured in from across the globe. Justin Hayward, his lifelong collaborator, wrote, "I am heartbroken. John was my brother in music. His presence, his wisdom, and his friendship shaped my entire life." Musicians from Rush, Yes, Genesis, and even modern acts like Coldplay cited the Moody Blues as one of their inspirations. Radio stations across the UK and the US played Isn't Life Strange on repeat that night, old fans cried. Young fans discovered him for the first time. Rolling Stone wrote, "John Lodge was the quiet heartbeat of one of rock's most thoughtful bands. His bass lines sang as much as his voice. People magazine described him as a poet of melody, a man who turned introspection into harmony." In Birmingham, local venues dimmed their lights in tribute. At the city's Symphony Hall, a spontaneous crowd gathered, candles in hand, singing Nights in White Satin in unison. It was haunting. It was beautiful. The kind of scene John himself would have written into a song. To this day, no official cause of death has been released. His family said only that he passed away suddenly and unexpectedly. But perhaps that is how he would have wanted it. No suffering, no spectacle, just a quiet farewell, carried by music. John Lodge's influence cannot be measured by chart numbers or awards alone. It lives in the way generations of musicians learned to blend melody with meaning, in how they dared to write about life, death, and dreams. His bass lines taught restraint. His lyrics taught reflection. and his life taught grace proof that success and humility can coexist. When asked in an interview what he wanted people to remember about him, he smiled and said that I loved the journey, that every note I played came from the heart. He never stopped believing in the power of music to heal. He believed that every song, no matter how small, could change someone's day, maybe even their life. And for countless listeners, his music did just that. As his family wrote in their final farewell, John was never happier than when he was on stage. That is how we will remember him, smiling, playing, and living through his songs. When the news of John Lodge's death broke, the world did not just lose a musician, it lost a poet of sound, a man whose bass guitar spoke like a heartbeat, steady, tender, and wise. For more than 60 years, John carried a light that reached far beyond the stage. He was not a man of loud gestures or public scandals. He was not the rock star who burned bright and faded early. He was the opposite, calm, thoughtful, faithful. The kind of man whose greatness sneaks up on you not through noise, but through grace. In every era, there are artists who define what music means for their generation. The Beatles taught the world to dream. Pink Floyd made it question reality. And the Moody Blues with John Lodge at its heart taught people to feel. Their songs were not just melodies. They were mirrors, reflecting every corner of human emotion, hope, loneliness, wonder, and faith. When you listen to Isn't Life Strange, you are not hearing a performance. You are hearing a man trying to understand the mystery of existence itself. That was John Lodge. He never sang at you, he sang to you. And somehow, you always felt he understood. Even as the years went by and hair turned silver, John never stopped believing in the power of the stage. He once said, "Every concert is a conversation between hearts. I play the bass, the audience plays the soul." That is who he was, a bridge between the earthly and the eternal. His family, who stood beside him through every tour and every quiet night at home, described his final hours as peaceful. He left surrounded by love, by the same harmonies that first inspired him as a boy, the Everly Brothers and Buddy Holly. In that moment, the circle was complete. The sounds that gave birth to his dreams were the sounds that carried him home. There is something poetic about that. John Lodge began with music, and he ended with music. It was not just his career, it was his faith, his identity, his prayer. Since his passing, fans have left flowers and handwritten notes outside Symphony Hall in Birmingham. Some simply read, "Thank you for the journey." Others quote his lyrics, "Isn't life strange? A turn of the page. Each candle, each whisper of his name in the crowd is proof that John's story did not end on October 10th. It continues in every record, in every concert memory, and in the quiet corners of hearts still touched by his art. Music journalists have called him the gentleman of progressive rock. But to those who knew him, he was simply John, a husband devoted to his wife Kirsten, a proud father, a loyal friend. He carried success with humility, fame with decency, and talent with gratitude. He never needed to chase the spotlight because the light was already within him. Even in his later years, he would often say, "I am not interested in being a legend. I just want to be remembered as someone who cared about the songs, about the fans, about life itself." And he will be, because legends fade, but kindness endures. The Moody Blues may never perform again the way they once did, but their music and John's voice within it will continue to echo across generations. Each time someone drops a needle on Days of Future Past, each time a young musician learns that a bass line can be as emotional as a lyric, his spirit will stir again. Perhaps that is what immortality really means, not statues or fame, but resonance, to exist in other people's hearts long after you are gone. John Lodge's final gift to the world was not his last concert, nor his last album. It was the reminder that music is eternal because emotion is eternal. Even now, when the night feels heavy and the world feels silent, somewhere out there a song plays. A low, steady bass hums through a pair of speakers. Someone closes their eyes, and for a moment, John is there smiling, playing, alive. He once said that music was the only language that could speak directly to the soul. And now, his own music does exactly that. It speaks to us across the distance between life and death, between yesterday and forever. The lights have dimmed. The stage is empty. But his sound goes on. So tonight, if you listen closely, you might hear it too. Not in the noise of the world, but in the quiet between heartbeats, a reminder that love, faith, and melody never die. John Lodge may have left this earth, but his harmony remains among the stars. And somewhere beyond the curtain, the next verse of his song has already begun. If the music of the Moody Blues ever brought peace to your heart, if John Lodge's words once guided you through the dark, then let his song live on through you. Share his music. Tell his story, because every time his name is spoken, every time his bass line hums through the air, he lives again not as a memory, but as a melody that never fades. This was his life, his legacy, and his eternal encore.